Talk about how you became so passionate about Indian cuisine.
Yeah. So a very long story short, I grew up a very picky eater, right? I ate mac and cheese and chicken nuggets. And a friend of mine, his family owned an Indian restaurant. They were Indian, and they would always try to get me to try food. And I was like, the preconceived notion was it all looked the same. It wasn't appealing. It wasn't appetizing. The scents were not scents I could recognize. And so our innate nature is when we don't know something is familiar, we fear it. And
Mhm.
so I was always afraid of it. So one day, when we were younger, he's like, "Hey, if I beat you in this video game, you got to try Indian food." I'm like, "Deal." And boy, am I glad I lost that. So the first bite of Indian food I had was this dish from a state called Goa, and it was called chicken vindaloo. And
Mm.
I remember the first time I ripped a piece of garlic naan and dipped it into that sauce, and I closed my eyes and took a bite. And it was like Neo seeing the Matrix. All of a sudden, though, a whole world opened up to me. I didn't understand that food could be that flavorful. I didn't understand. I was like, "How is this happening?" And I knew a good amount about cuisine.
Mhm.
The next day, his family needed some spices, and we went to the local spice shop. And there was this beautiful older lady at the end of the store who was kind of short. And I was just looking around like a deer in the headlights. And she came up to me and she's like, "You want to try something?" And I was like, "Sure." And she had a little tiny restaurant that she would just serve lunch every day. And it was this vegetable and it looked like grain to me. It's called suji sabji, which is kind of what it's called now that I know it. And so I took the first bite and it was the same sort of feeling. I was like, I never would have eaten this because it's just pure vegetables, like who wants to eat all that? Is what I was thinking at the time. And she smiled and she said, "Hi, my name is Indira." And I that began a life altering course for me. I ended up showing up there all the time. We became really good friends over years. I asked her and begged her to teach me to cook, and she's like, "You don't know how to cook." And I was like, "No, I really do though. Like, I'm a chef." And she's like, Western cooking." And so one day she needed some help on a website for hers. And I knew how to fix it. And so I was like, "If I do this, you got to teach me one thing." And so we made that deal, fixed the website, and the next thing I know is I was washing rice in the kitchen. And it began about a 6 year journey into so many different things. We would do catering orders together. I started learning Hindi and learning spices, cumin, being jira, and things like that, because I wanted to show her that this wasn't something that I wanted to appropriate. It was something that I wanted to appreciate.
Mm.
And in the last 10 years of my life, I have slowly weaned more and more to devoting my life to it. And in 2000, I sold my restaurants. And now I literally run the farmer's dinner and I full time just work at learning so much about Indian cuisine, history. I study with my guru, Kuresh Dalal, out of Mumbai. And Ragini, I have a podcast called More Than Masala, where we tackle one spice every month. And yeah, and now I run these really high-end pop-ups that take authentic flavors from the subcontinent and bring in modern plating styles. And so it's been an incredible journey that is part of my soul. It's just brings me so much love.
I love it. I love it. Now, what are some of the misconceptions about Indian cuisine that you found out during your journey?
Oh, I love that question. So first and foremost, not all of it is spicy, and I know that everyone thinks, "Oh, Indian food's spicy." No, it means spice as in flavor, not as in heat. There's a word
Mhm.
called masaladar in Hindi that means spicy, and not all dishes have that. The other misconception is everything is curry, right? The word
Mhm.
curry doesn't really translate very much. There's a thing called kaddi, which is kind of a gravy-based thing, but a curry is something the British kind of invented, the curry powder. They wanted to take that spice, that blend of spices back to the UK or England at the time, and they wanted to be able to bring that flavor back. So they created curry powder. And so there's so many dishes that have nothing to do with a rich gravy like that. And I'd say the third thing is food changes dramatically every single like 30 kilometers. Every
Wow.
single state has vastly different food. So to call something Indian food, I honestly don't even know what Indian food is. I think, at this point, it depends what state you're in.
Can you say how many do you remember how many different types of Indian cuisine you've had thus far?
Um, so I've cooked, I would say probably about one dish from every state at this point.
That's
I'm
incredible.
I'm still working on, and there's so many variations. If you did something like chat, so chat means the best translation we would have is it's a snack, but it means to lick, like to lick your fingers. And because it's like chats are these wonderful snacks that you get in street
Mhm.
food, and so there's so many varieties of chat. You could
Hmm.
get a dahi vada chat, you could get a different chat if you're in Gujarat. So it's so hard to quantify that. I think what I try to do now that I think is the most important is whenever I create a dish, I start by understanding the region that it's from. Number one, like where's its origin? And number two, what's the history behind the origin of this dish? Because if I'm going to replicate something that's so complex, and I've cooked insane food all over the West in wonderful fine dining kitchens, and nothing, and I mean nothing, has been as challenging as Indian food. It is so much harder than anything I've ever done. And so I look at the historical aspects of that. That helps me influence the cuisine.
And how much does this type of cuisine play into your farmers' dinners?
So now, every single solitary time I put out a dish, there's some sort of nod to it, whether that's a spice blend, or whether that's a chutney, or whether that's a technique. There's techniques called like tadka, which is basically kind of a tempering, like a ghee and flavored oil tempering technique. So I add techniques to help showcase these different things.
Mm.
And that brings people into, oh, Indian food is so much more. And that's the goal.